Hey guys, welcome back to the SinSters podcast. I, of course, am Betty Tucker, and with me as always is Noodles and Natalia. How are you
Hi.
ladies doing this morning?
Hi. I'm tired.
Hi, I'm tired too because I'm not a morning person.
I want everybody to realize that it's at 11 o'clock in the morning right now, so she's not an early after person either.
Yes, no, I just can't.
It's like nearly 4 p.m. for me, so I just want a fucking nap.
But you kind of live in make-believe land. Your time zones are weird.
Yeah, I'm technically in the future.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm not as far in the future as a certain friend of ours from Kiwi land, but you know.
Yeah, the one from Kiwi land, she lives in upside down.
Yeah, she's a wizard.
Yes, and unicorns. They have unicorns too.
They do have unicorns. They actually do have a wizard of New Zealand. We'll have to do a story about him one day.
We'll have to get her on for that, definitely.
Yes, apparently she's met him, I think.
She
Which
has.
is just bizarre. I love it.
So, what have you got for us today, Betty?
Okay, so we're going to continue on our 50 states of weird. Today we're going to start in Arizona. This episode is going to be devoted to two creatures. They're both closely related, only in folklore though. The Wendigo and the Skin-walker. They have some similarities, but then they also have vast differences. So that's what we're going to focus on the entire episode. So buckle in because this is going to be a fun one. It's easy to feel uneasy while driving through a desolate desert road of Arizona, especially at night, and particularly when you hear a short burst of taps on your window while cruising at 60 miles an hour and turn to see the shape-shifting, mutilated, half-human creature responsible for the high-speed interruption. Relax. It's only trying to rip your flesh from your bones. This legend is so ingrained in Arizona culture that when a Navajo woman was found brutally murdered in Flagstaff, the accused killer's defense in court was that the attack could have only been perpetrated by a skinwalker. Skinwalkers, like so many other ancient American urban legends, has roots in Native American folklore. While it's fairly hard to gather specific details, as speaking of potentially sinister legends is seriously taboo in the Navajo culture, it is understood that what non-Navajos refer to as skinwalkers are witch doctors, which have become an evil reflection of everything that the Navajo Nation values. Basically, they are men who were transformed into malevolent, murderous creatures that have no qualms about using their spiritual powers to kill. Navajo medicine men are trained to learn both the good and evil aspects of their power. The skinwalkers are those who have turned to the dark side, so to speak, and frankly, is terrifying. In Navajo culture, the skinwalker is a type of harmful witch which has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. The term is never used for healers. Animals associated with witchcraft usually include tricksters, such as coyotes, but can include other creatures, usually associated with death or bad omens, such as ravens, crows, or owls. They might also possess living animals or people that walk around. When they lock eyes with them, the skinwalker can actually inhabit their body and control their mind. Skinwalker stories, told among the Navajo children, may be complete with life and death struggles that end with either the skinwalker or Navajo killing the other, or partial encounter stories that end in a stalemate. Encounter stories may be composed as Navajo victory stories, with the skinwalkers approaching a hogan, which is a Navajo home or dwelling, and being scared away. Non-native interpretations of skinwalker stories typically take the form of partial encounter stories on the road, where the protagonist is temporarily vulnerable, but then escapes from the skinwalker in a way not traditionally seen in Navajo stories that take place away from home. Sometimes Navajo children will take European folk stories and substitute skinwalkers for the generic killers. Skinwalker legends typically are confused with Wendigo folklore, and it's easy to make the mistake. The Wendigo is a very similar creature to the skinwalker, but there are subtle differences. The Algonquin people are the most populous widespread North American native language group. Today, thousands of individuals identify with various Algonquin peoples. Historically, the people were prominent along the Atlantic coast and the interior along the St. Lawrence River and around the Great Lakes area. The groups consist of the people who speak Algonquin languages. The Algonquin folklore, the Wendigo, is a mythical man-eating creature or evil spirit native to the Northern American forests of the Atlantic coast and the Great Lake regions of the United States and Canada. The Wendigo may appear to be a monster with some characteristics of human, or as a spirit who has possessed the body of a human and has become monstrous. The Wendigo is historically associated with murder, insatiable greed, and the cultural taboos against such behaviors. The legend lends its name to the controversial modern medical term Wendigo psychosis, described by psychiatrists as a culture-based syndrome with symptoms such as intense craving for human flesh and fear of becoming a cannibal. In some indigenous communities, environmental destruction and insatiable greed is also seen as a manifestation of Wendigo psychosis. The Wendigo is part of the traditional belief system of a number of the Algonquin-speaking peoples. Although descriptions can vary somewhat, is the view that the Wendigo is malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural, and a spiritual being. They were strongly associated with winter, the north, coldness, famine, and starvation. Basil H. Johnson, a teacher and a scholar from Ontario, gave this description of the Wendigo. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation. Its desiccated skin was pulled tightly across its bones, with the bones pushing up and out against the skin. The complexion, the ash gray of death, and its eyes were pushed back deep into its sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from its grave. What lips it still had were tattered and bloody, unclean, and suffering from suppuration. The Wendigo gave off the stench of eerie decay, decomposition, and death and corruption. Wendigos are often described as giants that are many times larger than human beings. Whenever a Wendigo ate a person, it would grow in proportion to the meal that it had just eaten, so that it would never be full. Therefore, Wendigos are portrayed as simultaneously gluttonous and extremely thin due to starvation. Wendigos are seen as the embodiment of gluttony, greed, and excess. Never satisfied after killing or consuming one human, they are constantly searching for new victims. Some traditions, humans overpowered by greed could turn into Wendigos. The myth thus served as a method of encouraging cooperation. Humans could also turn into Wendigos by being in contact with them for too long. Among Algonquin tribes, a satirical ceremonial dance is sometimes performed during the times of famine to reinforce the seriousness of the Wendigo taboo, and it features someone wearing a mask and dancing backwards around a drum. The last Wendigo ceremony conducted in the United States that was recorded was at the Lake Wendigo of Star Island of Cass Lake, located in Leech Lake Indian Reservation in North America sometime in the early 2000s. Both Wendigos and Skinwalkers have had a surge in popularity in recent years. While Skinwalkers have found their place among paranormal discussion boards and personal accounts, the Wendigo has become a more common occurrence due to the television show Supernatural and the video games Until Dawn and Fallout 76. Speaking of those two games in particular, Noodles, do you have any information about those games? What do you have?
Yeah, I've actually got the Wikipedia articles open at the minute. Now, I'm a big gamer. I done love my games, right? I have played Until Dawn, I've played Fallout 76, I've played quite a few games that have ended up having Wendigo things in them, but the one I want to focus on is Until Dawn. And very, very briefly want to cover Fallout 76. When that was released, it's based in West Virginia, whereas there's quite a few urban legends around Wendigos in West Virginia, I believe. Now, in the Fallout series, they traditionally have a race of enemies called the ghouls, which are humans that have been irradiated and basically become zombies. They tend to be just normal humans. They live longer, even though they are rotting zombies, but eventually their brain gets affected and they become like feral. And they go cannibalistic. And as far as I can see of the Wendigos, they're a variant of the ghoul race in Fallout 76. The brief description that's given on them on the wiki is: Wendigos are humans that were mutated by radiation into deadly cannibalistic creatures with emaciated bodies that reflect their insatiable hunger. There's a couple of images will be popping up now. They have glowing variants and everything like that. It's quite interesting the fact that like normal ghouls in the Fallout series tend to be like kind of just gross running zombies basically, but the Wendigos are really different because they're really fast. They jump at you from the middle of nowhere. You'll be doing like a raid in a certain area and they will just fly out of nowhere, and like they can two-shot kill you, even when you're at like the highest level with like power armor and stuff. They're really powerful. So it's quite interesting that they've kind of kept, the legend of Wendigos being like really strong and big and scary. Like they've kept that strength thing in the game, which is power to them for it. Wendigos and Skinwalkers have also been quite popular in recent years. They showed up in the television show Supernatural. I don't know much about that because I don't watch it. I know people are going to hate me for that, but I haven't had a chance. I want to watch it, I just haven't had a chance.
I do. The last season is actually coming up, so you have time to binge the entire run.
Yeah, I see it too, and it's amazing. Like everybody that hasn't seen like Supernatural should see it. It's really great.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, campy monster of the week type things in there, but it's not all campy. I memean, there's been several episodes that brought me to tears, so it's actually a very good show. As far as Wendigos go in the supernatural universe, though, it's pretty much the same thing. A Wendigo is a former human whose cannibalism has transferred them into a creature with superhuman strength and speed that feasts on human flesh. There's been a couple of them pop up throughout the entire run. The first time they appeared, though, I think it was like in episode 2 or episode 1 even. It was way far back, and it was basically these guys were camping, and a Wendigo like took them, like ate their guts and stuff. So
Yum, snack.
got themselves a Scooby snack.
I know, like, the only thing I know about Supernatural really is from, like, memes that my friends share on Facebook. And so far as I know, salt is a big thing. Okay, then.
Yeah, you surround everything in salt. That way the ghost can't get to you.
Yes.
That's also how you get better at video games, but that's besides the point.
Of course, that is true.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Until Dawn now. Nat will probably want to jump in on this when I've finished saying my little bit, because Nat is a very big fan of a good old Markiplier and watched the full playthrough on his YouTube channel, I believe.
Yes, I love him. He's amazing. And I saw it here and it was great.
So I'm going to let Nat give her take on things in a minute. I only want to read a brief thing and then go into the game itself. In Until Dawn, Wendigos are revealed as the main antagonists after a psycho killer is kind of like a red herring. They were humans who have been changed by a Native American spirit into cannibalistic monsters after eating the flesh of other humans because of starvation. Now, Wiki goes into this more detail, but I'm going to give my take on it. When you play Until Dawn, you find out through picking up various things and going through all the different parts of the levels and stuff that there was a set of miners that they had like a massive mine on this mountain, and the families, like these kids have all gone up to visit and stuff like that, and two girls, sisters, went missing a year previously, I believe, or 2 years previously. Now, these miners were from like the 50s, and there was a massive collapse in the mine shafts. And of course, they're trapped down there with no means of escape, no food, no water, so some of them turned to cannibalism. And the cannibalism thus created the Wendigos, like the spirits inhabited them. The Wendigos came to be. You find out through more. You find out a bit of it in the game, but more so from a follow-on VR game. You find out more about it through a follow-on VR game, that they actually created an asylum on the mountain to house the Wendigos for experiments. And you find,
yeah, that's
like,
always a good idea.
yeah, it's a great idea. Let's experiment on the Wendigos. But you find like footage and stuff of like characters in the game. There's one guy called Bill, if memory serves right, who was like, or Bobby or something, that was very, very present and forward in the story, and he actually becomes like an antagonist to the antagonist Wendigo at the end, and they have a bit of a fight. It's quite cool. But you also find out the story of the two girls who went missing the year before, and they were sisters. One of them fell to her death, was instantly killed by the fall. The other one survived the fall that they had, and in order to survive, it seems that she ate her sister and became like the main Wendigo antagonist. Now, in the games, when you're playing, they can mimic human voices, and I think that's something that comes from Legend, if memory serves right. They can perfectly mimic human voices, and there's like one bit where you have to go and open a trapdoor. Like you hear someone screaming from the trapdoor that they need help, they're trapped, they're crying because they're in pain, and if you go, oh boy, your character gets beheaded.
And yeah, the mimicking does come from the legends I read in there. Not so much from the Skinwalkers, but definitely from the Wendigos.
Yeah, I have heard that they can mimic your voice or another person that, is close to you. so they can, attract you. And that is like the most terrifying thing ever. Like, I can't with that. Imagine like, for example, me being with my sister and like we separated, and then I hear her voice and I go to it and it's not my sister, it's a Wendigo, and yeah, I'm dead.
And that's something that seems to be reminiscent in like a lot of these Native American tales, because in the video about the creature that I will not name because every time I say that name we get all messed up,
Yay.
the otter creature, that was one of the things that it did also, was mimic the voice of, women or children crying in danger, etc. It didn't say that it mimicked any particular person's voice, but it does mimic to draw people in.
Yeah, in the game they made it so that it was like a perfect mimic. There's one character in it called Jessica who gets like pulled down into the mine shafts by it. She can survive if you play the game to like, because the whole point of the game is like to follow the butterfly effect to make sure you make the right choices, otherwise your character's gonna die. And there's like a good ending, a bad ending, and then in between endings for every option of which character goes which way. The character that gets pulled into the mine shaft, it perfectly mimics her voice from when she cried and screamed going through. So she,
That's
yeah,
pretty creepy.
she fell down the mine shaft and you can hear her like, "Oh, help, help, it hurts, help, I'm in pain." And literally, the Wendigo made like her voice to a T, like it was playing back a recording. Yeah.
Can't do that. It's too much. It's too terrifying to think about. Like, it could happen to you.
So I guess like the golden rule, as far as if you're being chased by a creature and get separated from your group, if you hear their voice, just ignore it.
Now, one thing I want to go over very briefly as well is there is a VR game that came out surrounding Until Dawn, because Until Dawn had 3 games in total so far. There was the main game that everyone knows and loves. If you haven't played it, I suggest you play it, or go to YouTube and watch some playthroughs of it, because it's a fantastic interactive story rather than like a game. Very, very story heavy.
Yeah, like Noodles say, is she's playing it way better than I ever could. It's a really, really amazing game. I saw Markiplier play it, and honestly, I was like, from the very first episode, I was like, wow, this is actually great. It took me by surprise because it started with like the killer, and then it turned into like a Wendigo, and I was like, whoa, hold up. So unexpected, so creepy, and everyone should play it and or see the playthrough, whatever you want. Is anything is really great. They did a good job, the makers, because that game was really terrifying.
Yeah, it was. I want to add, like, sorry for spoilers, but it's been out since 2015. You can't shout at me. Basically, yeah, just go and play it or watch some playthroughs. It's really, really good. I wanted to go in a little bit. The second game that came out was called Rush of Blood, which was basically an on-the-rails virtual reality shooter when VR first started to come out. They have the Wendigos in that, in virtual reality. I could not get past the menu screen. I screamed and cried because as you're loading into the fucking game, right? I have to make this point very clear. As you're loading into the game, if you turn your head at the exact wrong moment, a Wendigo will jump into your face.
Well, that's not cool.
No, and like considering
That
what,
horrifying.
yeah, and considering what they look like on the VR head, like, you see the pictures, you see what they look like in the game. They made that a 3D model in virtual reality, and they are huge and they are horrifying.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog.
Mhm.
I mean, that I would have the same reaction. I wouldn't be able to continue it because I would scream and crack like you too. So like, we're in the same boat here.
Yeah. I'm lucky I didn't break the VR headset because I threw it across the room. So moving on to the third game. Now this is the one that I'm most interested in talking about. If you get the main story from the main game, you kind of understand where the Wendigos come from, the history of the miners, etc., etc. The Inpatient is the third installment in the Until Dawn trilogy, and it is a VR experience where you play one of the patients in the asylum. Now, this gets really interesting. You're locked in a room with another patient, another miner or something, and You get to know your nurse, you get to know, all the people. Next thing, the Wendigos that are in the facility break out, and you're left alone in the room with your roommate. And depending on the choices you make, you could be playing a game where you yourself are becoming a Wendigo as you play it. Yeah, it depends on how you pick your choices in the first half of the game, where not half, I'd say an eighth of the game. The first very first bit where you're in the room with your roommate, you have to make the right decisions, otherwise turns out your roommate went missing all of a sudden. One night you went to sleep, the next morning you woke up, he wasn't there. So the room is completely locked and sealed, there was no way for you to get out, and then all of a sudden you can pull the door open you've never been able to pull open before. It kind of hints to that, or it gets knocked open by another Wendigo going down the hallway, because they bounce from wall to wall like spider monkeys. It's horrifying. And it's really interesting the way they did it, because there's a lot of, I don't know where it comes from, but you might know, Betty, there's things about Wendigos being related to deer, like were-deers.
Somewhat. A lot of the images of them, they actually have a deer skull for a head with the antlers. And I think it has a lot to do with the way that they move. Yeah. They're kind of springy on their feet like a deer would be when it was running. And there's some stories that kind of blend together Wendigo and a werewolf, were-deer type creature.
Because there's a Reddit post that came up about 3 years ago, about the same time as Until Dawn and stuff. I want to read this out because it's quite interesting. It's by someone called Maniacal. Sorry if I'm butchering that. They said general mythology and where did modern Wendigo design come from. So if you don't know, a Wendigo is a creature from Native American legend. Basically, if you turn to cannibalism, you get possessed by an evil spirit that turns you into a horrific monster that eats humans. Anyway, they typically look like a tall, lanky corpse, basically a super zombie, looks like the ones from Old Till Dawn, and you get a better idea. Recently, however, there's been many drawings and work showing the zombie were-deer. If you look at Wendigo on art sites and DeviantArt, the majority of what you see, don't get me wrong, it's a cool-looking monster, but it's not a Wendigo. As the title said, where did this look come from? It shows up in Supernatural, Until Dawn, etc. And someone replied in the comments saying, as far as they were aware, someone called Lachadonin, sorry again, as far as they're aware, there was never any down to very fine detailed descriptions of Wendigos. There's just, a generalization of oh, they're a bit creepy, they're a bit scary, they're a bit skinny. There's no complete description. Every tribe's got because they come from Native American tribes and stuff, the only descriptions are different, varying on which tribe you go to. Which
and then probably a lot of that has also to do with if it's truly taboo subject, they don't really want to speak about it. Yeah. So you only get bits and pieces.
Exactly, which is why I think it's very interesting that things started to turn to deer imagery. Because if you think about it, a deer is meant to represent it's Harry Potter's Patronus, for God's sake, a stag and a doe, for you know what I mean. It's meant to be this good and wholesome overseer of the forest, Bambi's dad, all that stuff, and then now it's been distorted.
In Native American culture, also they hold the deer in such high regard, it's almost a spiritual being for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of cultures like that. There's a lot of there's Japanese movies. I can't remember the name of it right now. Princess Mononoke. That's it. You get movies like Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke, where they kind of tap into this whole imagery of the deer being a pure and insightful character and stuff. And I think that it's interesting that culturally, people have taken this imagery of such a pure and beautiful character and literally butchered it and stuck its head on something to show how wrong and distorted it's meant to be.
And then you just got to think about it too. It's just a startling vision. Think about if you a buck with full rack of horns, but it was skinny and emaciated. That would be jarring because you're expecting those to be full and thick like a well-fed horse would be. And if you saw one skinny and emaciated and crazy looking, that would be very jarring, which is also something that I wonder, last year, especially last fall, there was a virus that was going around North America and
Yeah.
infecting deer. And it was kind of like, okay, the zombie deer it was a infection that they would have, and it would basically attack their brain, similar to mad cow disease.
Mhm.
And they would basically walk themselves to death, and they wouldn't eat, and they would then attack other creatures, almost like they had rabies. And I wonder if that's where a lot of the stories of Wendigo got stirred back up.
It's food for thought, definitely.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely a possibility.
But bouncing off that idea, Betty, to go back to the inpatient, in the original Until Dawn, they had a lot of deer imagery in that. There's one bit where you have to interact with animals at a number of points in that game, where if you choose the wrong thing, you will pay consequences for it later. If an innocent animal suffers at your hands, people will die because of it, right? That's like the whole
Okay.
idea in Until Dawn. So there's like an interaction scene with a bunch of deer at the edge of a cliff. They can either run you off the cliff or not, depending on how you've done things. And if you hurt the deer, it will have other consequences down the line as well. So that I thought was quite interesting when you think about all the like distorted imagery and stuff. Like there's still like this idea of like they uphold the law kind of thing in this world. And then you've also got in the inpatient, there is, if you tend to go down the path where you are becoming a Wendigo, you have like these vivid fever dream nightmares, which is what you have to interact and walk through in the game, and it's horrifying. As you go through, there will be like you can like chase deers or you can chase wolves, but it tends to like push you more towards deer further and further in if you're going down the Wendigo path, and I thought that was also quite interesting.
So it's almost like it's trying to push you towards salvation as you darker and darker, though.
Yeah, so those games are fantastic. They really are.
It would be nice if that was real though, like the part of like if you hurt an animal, there's gonna be like consequences. Cause I'm looking at you, animal abusers.
Mhm.
That'll happen. You'll turn into a Wendigo. Nobody wants that.
Calm as a bit.
Exactly. That way, people out there treat animals way better.
I'm so glad that you elaborated on that point now, because when you said, I wish that was real in real life, I was like, she wants to become a Wendigo. We're all fucked.
Well, she might. She might become a Wendigo just so she can go after the animal abusers.
Yeah, do that, eat them.
Honestly, yeah, I would.
I think that's all my points that I wanted to go over quite desperately. I just, basically, I took the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite games, because why the fuck not?
I mean, it's part of everything that we love, so... And I don't think we've really talked about video games a whole lot during the course of this yet.
Probably check out our sister channel.
Yeah, our sister channel, House of Spades, Jack Spade. He plays video games, and he does a voiceover. He streams the video games, and I believe he has played Until Dawn a couple of times.
He needs to finish it.
Yes, please finish it.
Bitch.
I'm waiting.
Bitch.
Usually on Sundays, he tries to pick like a survival type game, and he runs his show. It's called Survival Sundays.
He should
So,
start doing Wendigo
yes.
Wednesdays then, shouldn't he?
See, there you go. There, Jack, are you hearing this? Wendigo Wednesdays, make it happen.
Yeah, bitch.
Right, well, I guess that pretty much sums up this episode. We really hope that everyone enjoyed it, and it was fun for me. I learned a lot about the Skinwalkers and Wendigos, and a lot of you may be wondering too, how come I didn't include Skinwalker Ranch in this episode? Well, number one, Skinwalker Ranch is in Utah. It's not in Arizona. Some people think that it's in Arizona for some reason, and I think that's just because of the large Navajo nation there, because it kind of inhabits all of Utah. Well, not all of Utah. The Navajo Nation inhabits both Arkansas and Utah, and I believe there's other states in there. It's very large. But yeah, Skinwalker Ranch, I did some research on Skinwalker Ranch, and it kind of turned out to be like a bunch of bunk, just a bunch of hot garbage. Like there's not, I don't believe anything has ever happened there. I think it ends up being, they're going to try to turn it into like a touristy location, kind of like Rachel, Nevada, which is just outside of Area 51. If you can find it, find the Joe Rogan episode that he talks about Skinwalker Ranch, and you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying.
You know,
But who knows?
You know what we need now? Instead of, actually, after the Area 51 raid, we need an Arizona raid to find them Wendigos.
Yeah, that's somebody else. I ain't doing that.
Oh, God.
We gotta see them Wendigos. Ain't doing it.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, so I think that pretty much covers everything. You know, as always, I am Betty Tucker, and Noodles is here, and so is Nadia. And has anybody seen Kevin? Is Kevin anywhere? Kevin, do you have anything?
I'm just disappointed.
Love you too, boo. All right, y'all have a good day.
Bye.